Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassel. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back.
You are listening to Spirit Radio, The Paranormal Experience, with your hosts Willie Hassel and Lynn Nickerson on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to Spirit Radio, The Paranormal Experience. I'm Willie Hassel, along with the lovely, the mystical, the mysterious. There she is, Lynn Nickerson. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Willie. Good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good for a young guy.
Yep. And you're getting younger every day, too.
I'm getting younger every day. My hair is getting less and less.
It's being
gray.
Lightened by the sun, Willie.
Lightened by the sun. That's it, exactly. My getting a tan on my skin. My hair is, I don't know, anyway. No, enough of that
The point is, though, that you're getting younger.
I am, and so
Younger by the minute.
And so are you.
Yeah,
you know?
I've noticed
you look
that.
much younger than you did wasn't last week, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
It was last week, wasn't it?
No, we weren't here last week, were we? Or were we? I don't know. I can't remember. But anyway,
it's not important.
But anyway, I happen to know something about you, and that is that you are fascinated with stone walls.
I
You
am.
love stone walls.
I love just about anything made out of stone.
Yep, that's right. Stone walls,
Bridges,
structures,
barns,
all that
houses.
kind of stuff. So have I got a surprise for you?
Oh, do you, Willie?
I brought in a guest tonight.
You brought in a guest tonight, Willie?
Technicalities.
Okay.
Tonight on Spirit Radio, The Paranormal Experience. Tonight we welcome to the show Matt Adams. Matt is host of the Northeast Historical Stone Sites Investigations and Explorations. They are a group who are investigating stone structures around New England and the Northeast, from stone chambers to circles to walls and complexes. It is their goal to bring these historic sites to the public eye and help to preserve these treasures for generations to come. Matt has been busy filming a docuseries on some of these sites and is here to share with us some of his knowledge. So, welcome to Spirit Radio, Matt Adams. Good evening.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hi, Matt. So nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And Matt is joining us in the studio. So that means we have an open phone line if anybody wants to call, 603-430-9722. Or if you don't want to call, maybe you're shy, you can text to that same number, 603-430-9722.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you if you have a question for Matt. Boy, that was hard to get out. So, Matt, so you've started, it's actually Northeast Historical Stone Sites Investigations and Explorations, right?
Yes.
Okay. What instigated you? What piqued your interest to get this whole thing started, and how long ago was that?
So about 2004, when my kids were little, I took them to the Wax Museum in Salem, Massachusetts, and, as you do with your kids. And the founder of the museum was a local sheriff, and he had collected a lot of stories all throughout New England during his time as a sheriff, and he would bring them home.
What was his name?
Robert Ellis Cahill.
Yeah, Cahill.
Yeah. Yes.
But was he still alive at that time in 2004?
Yes, he was.
Oh, you were? Okay,
Yes.
So you got to talk to him.
I got to talk to him, yes.
Oh, I have 9 of his books.
I have all 27 of the
does he
small
have that
series.
many? Yeah, I have
And
9 of them.
The other one, Wayward Sheriff. The Wayward Sheriffs of Essex or Middlesex County.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I've got to get that. I don't know if they're all out of print now or not, but I did manage to get 9 of them. I think they're still in print, aren't they?
I'm pretty sure there are.
Okay, so you got to talk to him. So what did
I
he
did.
have to say?
So, well, it was in 2005 when I actually got to talk to him. But I first found his book, The Ancient Mysteries of New England.
Yep, I've got that one.
That was the one that caught my eye. And lo and behold, there were things in it that I could go to and visit and touch and see and feel with my own hands and eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was enamored. I
Yeah.
was just drawn.
Yeah.
And so the ideas in the book, as looking back on it now, as fantastical as some of them were, they just were enough to
pique your interest.
glue me to the topic. So,
And which in particular? Was it some of the stone structures in particular that piqued your interest?
so I was living in Lowell at the time,
Oh.
and I went to the
Druid
Westford
Hill?
Night. I went to Druid Hill.
And Westford Night, because I was going to ask
Yeah.
you that too.
Yeah.
So, okay, go ahead about...
And I went to Turtle Mound in Andover.
oh, boy. Willie, did you hear that?
I did. I heard that.
We've been talking about we want to go there, but now it's private property.
Actually, the reverse. It used to be private property, and
Oh.
the old owners have sold,
No kidding.
and there's been a new development on it, and that part of the land was actually deeded to the town of Andover, so they're in possession of it. This was a couple years ago.
Wonderful.
So a right of way had been put in, and it's open to the public to go and view.
That is a wonderful
right.
piece of information.
Okay, you'll have to give us directions on that after the show.
That's super. Okay, so you went to Turtle Mound.
Yes.
What kind of feelings did you get there?
Well, I was looking at the stones, and the feelings that I got intuitively about it were that there might be part of it that's really old, but that would be on the very bottom, and everything else would have been built up on top of it. And that was, later on, as I got more into studying this topic, I realized the things that I saw unconsciously that led me to think that. And so that's, even today, like this past summer, I was on a field trip with James and Mary Gage.
I was going to ask you if you knew them.
Yes, I do.
Wonderful. Okay.
And so I was on a field trip with them, and the way that they had researched this, they figured out exactly what it was. So all the credit goes to them. But they confirmed what I felt 10 plus years ago, probably 14 years ago.
Okay, so what did you feel at 14?
That it was...
Or 14 years ago, I'm sorry.
I know, I was going to say, like, I wasn't 14.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was, this is something more modern in construction, but still older than I was.
Yeah.
A lot older than I was.
So for two time periods kind of really separated from each other.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What about the purpose of the place?
So the interesting thing is that for a long time, the early researchers, and this is kind of back in the heyday, you have to understand there was no internet, there was no free flow of information. And the things that people of that time had seen that resembled these things caused them to believe that they were of European origin. And so there's a lot of those old theories, which, at the time I bought into because I didn't know any better. But now after researching this stuff, it's like I don't believe that so much anymore. I'm open to certain possibilities, but I've closed down a lot of the old fantastical ideas. But the old researchers had found certain artifacts at a dig underneath it. And so that led to the assumption that it was more Native American in origin. And the old property owner actually found some artifacts too on his own on that land, which used to be a farm back in the day. So time passes, the farmer loses, access to. He didn't really lose access to the land. He sold the farm, moved on, passed away, whatever. Time passed. People kind of forgot about what it was. Mary and James Gage did a lot of research into this, and they went and read old newspaper articles, and they got the idea from a neighbor who was interviewed about it way back in, I think, the 30s or 40s.
Okay.
That it was a rock garden. It's called a rockery. And so that was, and so that was what it was when the farmer owned it. And he and his son built it maybe over a period of 8 or 10 years or something. But this farmer had all of these plants brought in from all over the world. So it was really a showpiece for him. And there are some more modern signs, like there's iron in stones, there's drill marks that
Yeah.
we know are from the colonial period. So all of that stuff lends to the truth of the place.
So are you talking a more recent period? You're talking like 1930s?
I'm talking about maybe mid to late 1800s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But how about preceding that? Do you feel that there's more antiquity to it? Like, maybe, do you think it could have been the foundation of it, built around 1000 BCE?
I wouldn't be able to guess a time period as to when anything underneath it would have been built. I haven't done a dig there. I don't know. I didn't dig up artifacts. I didn't look at them. In fact, people are still trying to track down the artifacts that were dug up so that they can get a look and better understand what time period it came from.
So there's no real answer as to its origins just yet,
no,
right? Okay.
No. And the interesting thing is that it's called Turtle Mound, but my son and I got a drone up above it in the tall trees, mind you, and I had to take 2 shots from up above and stitch them together. It doesn't even look like the shape of a turtle from above.
It must just be because it looks like a lump.
Yeah.
Do you recall what Maureen Wood sensed up there? She did get... Maureen Wood is a trance medium, and she went there with Ron Kolick. And she did go into trance while she was there. But I can't remember if it was a Native American spirit or not. I believe it was.
Boy, are you stretching my memory.
Ooh.
I do not recall either.
Yeah, they didn't have any more input as to its history and its origin, just that the Native Americans were around there, and they used it, and they did use it as a sacred spot, as I recall from her channeling.
I believe so.
Yeah, well,
that's the best I can do at the moment.
Yeah, I hate to second guess myself, but I do remember her channeling, and I believe it was Native American.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, but the place is just mystifying, isn't it?
It's interesting to say the least.
Was there much in the way of quartz that was found?
Not really, no.
No?
Most of it's granite.
Okay. So that was one of the leads that you found in the book. Did Ellis give you anything else?
In 2005, I had one of my goals when I first found all of this stuff was to do a documentary.
Oh.
But with little kids and, all of that, you don't have the fund or the time to do that. So,
no.
But one of the things that I was able to do was contact Robert, and I was lucky enough to catch him. He had moved to Florida. He had retired to down there. And I was lucky enough to catch him on one of his visits back up to Salem. And so one day in 2005, summer of 2005, in July in the hot heat, we were able to meet in Salem Access, the public TV station there. And we sat down to do an interview, and Salem was kind enough. I wasn't a member of Salem, but they were kind enough to lend me their studio to do this interview.
Oh, nice.
And so everything gets set up. Robert sits down, and this crazy lightning storm comes through, and all of the microphone cables are on the ground, so you hear every lightning strike. And I'm talking to Robert about this stuff. I'm talking to him about some of his other books, Things That Go Bump in the Night, and you get chills just listening and watching the video. It's really something.
Well, that's Salem, right?
That was such an opportunity. There's the tale that, all of the sheriffs were supposed to be cursed and die of a blood disease. He didn't die of a blood disease, but he did have a heart attack, didn't he?
I don't recall, but he did pass away very shortly after I interviewed him, and I think that is the only known interview of Robert Ellis Cahill. And that's up on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it.
I will check that out. I think the man was amazing. He was really a pace setter.
He did so much in his time. He wasn't just a sheriff. He was an author of all these books. He was an explorer. He did underwater, like...
diving or scuba diving?
Scuba diving, yeah. But he also did welding, underwater welding, too.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
He had his hands on all these different things.
Yeah. Interesting character. Okay. So, from there... what did you start doing? You just started going off and taking your little field trips
Yeah.
to different sites that
Yeah.
interested you.
I did a few sites when the kids were little, and then, fast forward to 2016, Jerez and I moved
Yeah.
and spent the whole summer doing that, and I hated it. So the next summer, 2017, I was like, I'm getting out with a vengeance. And so the stone stuff came up. I'm like, I haven't done this in a while. Let's do that. So my sons and I set out to just go find some cool places and see. And we went found a landowner in New Hampshire and asked for permission to go on their land and find this old stone, quote, cave or stone chamber.
What was the name of it, or had it been named?
I think it had been named and researched previously. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Can you name the town?
No,
Okay.
I'd rather not, because it's
Okay.
private land and I want to respect the landowners.
Okay. Okay, are you talking about Blistering Butte?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
That is one place I want to go to, too, but privately owned.
It is private land,
Have to
and
see it from
the
a
owners would
distance.
prefer that no one show up. Yeah.
Okay, so this other place that you can't name, go ahead and tell us about that.
So we got directions from the family, and they said, yeah, it's okay. Here's where you can park, walk in, look for these signs and that kind of thing. And it was so overgrown that we just missed it. We ended up walking right past it. We were out there for an hour. Hot July, 101 degree weather, sweating. We almost died. I mean, it was bad. So on our way out, when we gave up, we saw that last marker that they told us, and we turned around and followed the rest of the directions and found it. And so then I shot this video. It was really, a bad video. I'm sweating, I'm panting, I fall over, I'm shaking because I'm so, dehydrated and hot. And I stressed how bad the video was because it got 14,000 views on Facebook in a week.
14,000?
14,000 views in
That's
a week.
fabulous.
It's insane.
How did that happen?
We posted it to our page and shared it in a couple of groups, and it went
my
viral.
gosh.
It just went viral.
What
That's
do you
pretty cool.
suppose was
Yeah.
in it that was so attracting?
I think the idea of the unknown is really what captures people. That's what captured me, and that's all I can imagine captured everyone else.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
what
I
is this
suppose-
strange thing?
We did, we interviewed Dennis Stone at America's Stonehenge.
I love Dennis. He's awesome.
He's wonderful, isn't he? And he's so knowledgeable.
He knows everything.
So we sat and I interviewed him, and Willie did the filming of it. What we probably should have done is had more pictures, but what we did was we discussed all the possibilities of the origins, and we talked at pretty great length about the different alignments and so forth.
Yeah.
But we never got 14,000 views. That's incredible. Maybe because it's more visual. I don't know.
Possibly.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
But we talked about the stone chambers and the fact that there are effigies there. There are there's a carved head, there's a bird effigy, and there's an eye, which are a couple of things I want to talk to you about because you did find some of those things, a fish and a bird. So I'm not quite sure which approach to take. I was thinking that maybe we could go from site to site, and yet we could spend about a half an hour on each site that that you visited. Let me ask you then just a couple of general questions. You have like a network of a structure, like a really huge complex. There are those. There are things just like chambers. Then you've got stones that have got the markings on them, the runes on them, and you've got something you call the lime kiln, which I didn't quite see, but I saw the site. So some of these things seem to be almost like little satellite locations to perhaps a bigger location. That's kind of what I'm getting from this. What do you think? You had things like the tripod rock, so that isn't a complex unto itself, but it does have some alignments. Druid Hill, that's got some alignments. And personally, I think that it does hook up with America's Stonehenge.
I found evidence that it might.
Good. And while I was there, and Willie and I we used his Sky app, the stars, and it seemed to me that it was a layout for the spring solstice, spring equinox sunrise, I think. Does that sound right?
Possibly.
Or do you think sunset? the way it was lined up, it seemed to be lined up toward the east where the sun would be rising, and it would seem to be pointed toward America's Stonehenge.
So what I know of Druid Hill and how it would possibly connect to America's Stonehenge is this. There are two stones within this small
within that little
triangular kind of eye
planchette
drop.
shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are two stones. One of them is said to have been moved, where there's now a road that goes into a parking lot in the back, because it's a baseball field now.
It is, yeah.
And there's a playground there, which I used to bring my kids to when they were little.
Huh.
And so they'd be on that, and I'd be looking at stones. But these two stones, one of them I believe was moved from where the street is and then placed closer to the complex. That's kind of tipped over on its side. And then there's another one a few feet away. And
that is notched, right?
I don't know
is
if
that
it's
the one
notched.
that's notched.
I don't know. But if you were to draw a line between the two of those stones, it would extend as far as America's Stonehenge, and it would go directly to America's Stonehenge. Not like near it, not through part of it, but directly to America's Stonehenge.
But you're not sure of the alignment, though, right?
Right, because that one stone was moved. But where did they move it from? We don't know that. And we're probably not ever going to know that. So there's something there that suggests that it could be, but then we're not sure.
I was kind of taking it from the shape of the planchette and using that end as a pointer, because I did try both of the alignments.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one seemed to be more... I don't know, almost more to the north than it should have been. So, you lined up your app, and it seemed to line up directly east.
Yeah, it was east. Yeah, and it would be east from there to Stonehenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad that's a real possibility. That's kind of neat. So that indicates to me that there were most likely like little satellite structures, and it might have been, other bands of people that were farther away that might have did some of their celebration, but then they might have had a real, like the winter or summer solstices, they might have gotten all together then, and maybe just at the equinoxes they had smaller parties of rituals and celebration. Maybe, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. It's all guesswork.
Yeah,
at this
it
point.
is. It's all because why would there be one great big center and then have little satellite places like this?
Yeah.
It would seem like they're all related somehow.
All connected. I agree with you in some way.
I believe wasn't it Dennis Stone's son that discovered that America's Stonehenge lines up exactly with the Stonehenge in England?
I don't know if it was him, but I think it was one of the researchers.
I thought it was his son.
It might have been.
I think it was the son that mentioned it on the TV show. I don't remember which show it was, but whether or not it was him that actually discovered it, I don't know.
Right.
But I do remember him saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, the Tripod Rock in Kinland, New Jersey. Now, that's 130-ton stone. That amazes me. That's sitting on three little rocks.
200.
200 ton?
200 tons.
It's 200 ton.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the largest perched boulder in the continent.
But it is on three stones, right?
It's entirely lifted up off the ground and perched on three stones. And it looks like it should fall over, to be honest. If anyone's out there listening and has access to the internet right now, just do a quick search engine for Tripod Rock and you'll see what we're talking about. But let's dive deep into this one.
Yeah, please. So, how do you move a stone that large?
There are ways.
There are ways.
There are ways.
Maybe with leverage, but then there's also the possibility of one of the theories in Egypt, the way they moved their stones was through rhythm and vibration, sound, and that has been proven to be true. Whether it's applicable to Egypt, I don't know. But if it works on some things, it should work in principle. So that's one possibility, one possible way they did it. But why did they do it?
So there's a few things in there. Let me try to unpack that. I have seen on a small scale how vibration can affect certain things, sand, pebbles, small things.
Makes different designs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I have yet to be shown how this would be done on such a large scale. So for me to buy into that, while I consider it a possibility, I can't personally buy into that until someone can show me the method. Now, there was a viral video, I think it's on YouTube and even Facebook, and this gentleman out in, I think, somewhere in the northern Midwest of the United States, he's able to move 20-ton stones with simple fulcrums and levers.
I think I saw that.
Yeah.
In the middle of the field. And
yeah. He does it all by himself. He was able to turn an entire barn on a pebble just by leveraging these things. So there are ways, and the knowledge obviously has been lost since we don't know how to do it, but there are very simple explanations for how they did it.
Okay.
Yeah, like the coral, what is it down there in Florida? Coral,
the Coral Castle.
Coral
it's called.
Castle, yeah.
And his name starts with an S and Skelt.
I don't remember.
It's odd, but it's an odd name. The guy was only about 5 feet tall, and they think that he used.
He did all his work at night, didn't he? So when nobody could actually see what he was doing.
We didn't want to reveal his methods. Yeah. But go ahead. Cool. So, why do you suppose this was done, Matt?
So, the one thing that shows up time and time again is that high places were important to the builders, and I am going to make the assumption that the builders are Native American, and this comes from traveling extensively throughout the Northeast, looking at exactly how much stonework was out there, and asking simple questions like, who was here? Who had the manpower to do all of this stuff? And it really only comes down to two possibilities. The colonials, but why would they do these things when life was so hard back then? They would have had to have been focusing on all these other things. Like, do you know how much wood you burn in a day trying to keep warm in the winter? How many cords of wood do you need? And how long does it take to chop that? You don't have time to build these things that have no value every day. So that leaves, just by logic, the Native Americans. Now, why would they do that? They would do that for cultural beliefs. They had these very, why do people go to church? Why do they believe what they believe? They have these ideas, they hold steadfast to them, and they do things to celebrate those beliefs. So for me, that seems like the most logical explanation. So from here on out, I'm going to assume that most of what I see is done by Native Americans because I think that's the most plausible explanation. And again, I'm coming from, I read all the early ideas like these were Irish, Celtic things. They were, Viking. As fantastical as it is to believe that, I have come to a different conclusion. And so
There are a lot of connections to Ireland.
There are,
Irish structures and any UK structures, but particularly Ireland, that's been mentioned several times. Particularly the stone chambers and quartz rocks being inside.
Right.
So just because there doesn't seem to be enough proof then that it's older than the Native Americans, you're sort of excluding the idea of Vikings, perhaps?
I'm excluding the idea of Vikings because not enough evidence has been found to say that they were here for a very long time.
Okay.
He who differentiates well learns well. This is a maxim of law that I learned, in my research, right? So if you differentiate well, you learn well. So let's differentiate the Vikings from the Norse. The Norse are actually an older culture, and the Vikings are the younger version of the old Norse. Yeah. So who are we really talking about here? Was it the Norse that may have came? I don't know. There hasn't really been any evidence, DNA evidence found to suggest that they were here. And that, to me, would be the smoking gun, and we just don't have that. So it's really hard for me to buy into some of the ideas, but there are a lot of similarities. I've seen photos of perched boulders in Russia that look exactly like ones that are here in this area. And how is that possible? There are
Yeah.
stone chambers in Russia that look like what's here,
I know.
that look like America's Stonehenge. How is that possible?
Well, then getting back to Tripod Rock,
Mhm.
what do you suppose?
But you know what? We're at the bottom of the hour.
Oh no, already?
No.
So how about if we get back to Tripod Rock
All right.
after we
Okay.
take a little break? Spirit Radio, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I want to squeeze in as much as I possibly
Yeah,
can.
I have a lot to say about Tripod Rock.
Okay, good. The other one that really blew my mind that I hadn't heard of before was the Bear's Den.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much to that site.
I think that is actually, I made a lot of mistakes when I was there. I assumed that a lot of that was Native American, and I don't think that anymore. I think that it was a lot, there may have,
Or later?
later, yeah. There's just too much there that I overlooked the first time because I was so
Really?
caught up in the idea of Native Americans that now I'm on the other side, and I think it was actually, a lot of it's post-colonial, yeah.
Who would have done that?
Grist mill, it would have been a grist mill.
Oh, the grist mill.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They would have been logging there, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. There's actually the reason they call it Bear's Den is because there's a face of a bear in the rock.
Does it look carved or does it look natural?
Oh, it looks carved, yeah.
Oh, it does?
If you look at it, it looks a little cartoonish even.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's probably not real old either then.
I don't
You
think so.
think so?
No, not anymore.
Hmm. Okay, then, well, I'd like to squeeze in some time too to speak about Newport Tower. I'd like to get your take on that.
Sure, sure.
And you're not thinking Bellow Falls petroglyphs was Native American too, do you?
I do.
You do?
I do. Yeah.
Did you check out where he fell?
I would love to buy into his ideas.
Supernatural Magazine, one of the UK's top paranormal magazines, provides support to Spirit Radio, the paranormal experience. It is the magazine's goal to bring every aspect of supernatural news and research from around the world under one roof to create a universal platform for all those interested in the supernatural. More information can be found at supernaturalmagazine.com. And you are listening to Spirit Radio, the paranormal experience on WSCA 106.1 FM in Portsmouth, West End.
He spoke a bunch of languages.
Yeah, yeah. And he was surrounded by other linguists.
Yes.
He didn't just do, he got criticized for,
I know he did.
his translations and how quickly he seemed to do it and all this stuff. But what people don't know is he was surrounded by other linguists who they were on board with his idea.
Yeah.
He didn't write his books by himself. He had other linguists,
So
around
the
him.
idea of Viking runes or Ogam or whatever.
Yeah.
He knew what he was talking about. He didn't always know the exact translation, perhaps.
Yeah.
I think he was onto something.
If you bring that up, I've got a small, quick story about something that might be connected to that I want to explore.
Which exactly? Bellows Falls?
Well, fell in
Okay.
his the markings.
Okay.
The ones that he believed were Ogum.
I'll bring that up. But
Yeah.
are you ready?
We're ready. I'm going to read the
Promise the
community
listeners.
calendar. Gotta get that in there.
We promise the listeners Tripod Rock.
You always try to continue stuff in the
Listening to Spirit Radio, the paranormal experience on WSCA 106.1 FM. And from the community calendar, hey, this is a good one. The James House Museum. The James House Museum and Spirit Chasers Paranormal present Cold Spring Harbor, the ultimate Billy Joel tribute band. Join us Sunday, September 22nd at 2 p.m. for an outdoor concert by a great band. Bring your lawn chairs, bring your blankets, and bring your enthusiasm. This is going to be an outdoor show in a beautiful setting. We will also have a 50-50 raffle silent auction, and margaritas of Exeter will be on hand with all of your favorite Mexican dishes. The James House is located at 186 Old Farm Road in Hampton, New Hampshire. Admission is by a small donation, with all proceeds going directly to the James House Association, a registered nonprofit, for the continued upkeep of this piece of Hampton history. And the rain date is Sunday, September 29th. For further information, contact Comcast.net. And welcome back.
Welcome back, Matt. Is my mic on, Willie?
Your mic is on.
Okay, it's because my headset.
You are connected. Oh yeah.
I knew that.
See, don't blame me.
Okay, so we were discussing tripod rock, and I was asking Matt Adams here what the purpose of tripod rock could possibly be.
Okay, so there's a couple of different things that I found.
Okay.
Now, I was reading 40-year-old site reports on this, and what was known about it was that there are two other small boulders near it, and between those two boulders, if you stood in a certain place next to this other stone, you would see the summer solstice sunset in between those two boulders. And on the next mountain,
there's a notch.
There was another boulder, and the sun would set directly on top of that boulder. So that's what the original researchers found, and they found a couple other things. The three pegs underneath this 200-ton boulder appeared to be in a 3-4-5 triangle. So they had that. And then there was this, it's a triangular notch up on top of it, and it runs the length of the boulder. Now, they thought it was aligned.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, they thought that was aligned to north and south. Well, it sort of is. But one of the other things they suggested was that this line ran through those two boulders that I just mentioned, the summer solstice sunset boulders, and then through a pass between the next two mountains on the next ridge, which I thought, hey, wow, that's amazing. Let me go to Google Earth and use the line tool and go see that. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Except the line, if you were to extend it from the boulder, does not naturally go through those two sunset boulders. And so I was like, that's weird. And not only that, but it didn't actually go through the pass. And so I tried to fudge it. I said, let me take this line and make it go through those two boulders. And even then it didn't go through the pass. So I'm like, oh man, like, how did this happen? But where the line did go was the highest point on that next mountain, which makes more sense because they liked high places. They tried to make a lot of these things way up on the tops of mountains, and that's the highest point on that mountain. So that makes even more sense than what they had suggested.
Seems to me, though, that they could have used a smaller stone closer to the ground. It would have been a whole lot easier.
Right. Why would they use this?
Yeah.
Well, they're on the top of a mountain. How does a large boulder even get onto the top of a mountain? So I'm of the mindset that that boulder itself is what geologists call glacial erratic. And okay, sure, I'll buy into the idea that a glacier moved that 200-ton boulder there. But based on what I've seen and just look at the site, there's no way a glacier dropped that boulder on three small stones and it stayed perfectly balanced for hundreds of years.
I think that was artificially done.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't naturally done. But, maybe it could have been that there was enough dissolvable rock, if it was attached, that it got dissolved over eons. But to have it placed on three boulders or three much smaller stones,
at
it's
an
just
angle.
improbable. At an angle.
Yeah, it's not on flat ground. It's probably, I think the angle's about 22 or 23 degrees, which aligns with the axial tilt of the sun.
Of the sun?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So more discoveries about tripod rock.
You say the tilt of the sun. The sun has an axis? I mean, it doesn't twirl on an axis, does it?
The Earth does.
The Earth does.
The sun appears to have that from Earth. So between the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year, and the summer solstice, which is the longest, the Earth tilts. It's wobbling back and forth, and you don't. As the observer, you only see the sun move. You don't see the Earth move. You see the sun move.
Oh, so you're saying it's the same angle as the difference between the two positions of the sun, between the two extremes of
the Earth. The Earth is wobbling, and it tilts
Right.
back and forth throughout the year, and that's what causes the sun to move in the sky from winter solstice, where it's at its lowest azimuth, and the summer solstice, where it's at its highest azimuth.
So the angle that the rock is tipped at is equal to what again?
I believe it would be the 23 degrees
Of the
of
change
the tilt
of
of
the
the
Earth.
Earth.
Okay. Of its
Yeah,
wobble.
Right.
We have a text message here from a listener who is unnamed, but he says, "Are you familiar with the Stone Can in Stratham, New Hampshire, which is out in the middle of a cornfield?"
I have researched into that a tiny bit, but I've not been there yet myself.
I hadn't heard of that. Where again?
In Stratham, New Hampshire. Out in the
Carnes in Stratham, New Hampshire?
out in the cornfield.
How big are they?
I don't know.
Ask Mr. No Name.
Yeah, text back in and tell us some more about it.
I hadn't heard about that, because if it's just a little pile, it could be anybody.
Yeah, you have to look closely.
You
a lot of
do.
these things you have to look very, very closely at. Is it
Yeah.
a field clearing pile, or is it an actual cairn? And how
Yeah.
do you know, and how do you tell the difference?
Yep.
You have to learn those things.
And where is it located? Within this field, where is it located?
I just asked him for more info, please.
Oh, okay. Well, so we won't waste any more time, but we'll certainly answer him once he gets back here. So is that pretty much what you wanted to say about Tripod Rock?
Oh, no. There's more.
Okay. Please tell us.
So that triangular notch that I mentioned,
Yes.
I was looking at it from the side, and I saw what looked to be like a profile of a human head
Really?
on top of this triangular notch, and I was like, wait a second. That looks like a person. A forehead and an eye, and the eye is notched, and there's a nose, and there's a mouth, and it's,
How large was this?
I mean, it's maybe 1.5 feet long,
Oh,
to maybe
okay.
2 feet long at most. From
Okay.
from the tip of that, on the end of the rock, from the tip of the triangular notch, down maybe a foot into the stone.
Okay.
And it appears that the whole top of the stone was worked. The side that I saw it from, it's actually lower than the other side of the triangular notch. So you've got this uneven balance, but that side of the stone that has less is also the side that hangs off the two rocks underneath it
Okay.
longer than the other side. So it's almost like they removed weight to balance it. That's how it looks.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what they did, but that's how I can explain it.
But why a face?
So I thought to myself, my first thought was, that looks like an invitation to get up there and lie down. So I did.
Okay.
I got up there and I lied down. I'm like, what would he be looking at? So I took out this little app I have on my phone that tells you where the stars are going to be. And I put in the important dates, the solstices, the equinox. And the last one that I did was summer solstice. On the night of the summer solstice, the Milky Way galaxy rises out of the southern sky and extends all the way through the sky to north.
Okay.
So that happens in the middle of the year. So not only do you have the longest day of the year, but you also have, which is already marked at the site that we know, you also have the marking of the Milky Way.
So that face, does it look like it's looking up to the sky?
It looks like it's looking up to the sky, but there's something else about the eye.
Okay, go ahead.
You can stand anywhere on this planet, and around you there's 360 degrees. For this eye to be aligned to 270 degrees is a 1 in 360 chance, right? Do you know what 270 degrees is at that latitude? We'll skip the weight, but
I don't know.
it's the equinox sunset. So this eye on top of this boulder that appears to be in a profile of a man's face
Yeah.
is aligned to the equinox sunset? Really?
Where is it setting? Is that at the
In the
top,
western sky.
at the top of that notch of the mountain with the highest peak?
No,
Is
so
that the alignment, or was it in the notch?
What people don't know, because they didn't look at it with the same eyes, there's what I believe is an actual stone seat about 50 feet away. And if you were to sit on that seat, you would see 3 sun events. You would see the winter solstice, and that would sort of gently caress another stone that sits off to the left. In the middle, there's Tripod Rock, where the equinox sun sets.
Mm-hmm.
And then off to the right a little bit of Tripod Rock is the summer solstice sunset. So from this one vantage point, you have 3 or 4 if you count the equinox as 2, but you have at least 3 solar events. Even from that stone seat 50 feet away, 270 degrees falls directly on that eye.
And it's the slant of the eye?
The boulder is faced almost exactly to the west.
Okay.
So if you're looking at it faces up at the southern sky,
Uh-huh.
but then the whole other side of it is facing directly west,
Okay.
where the sun sets. So from that stone seat, and even if you're on top of the boulder, 270 degrees is where the sun sets.
What are you using as the baseline to get that? Is it the ground, or is it...
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. The one thing that I know is almost always you're going to have an elevation of about 0 degrees. So from that high up, if you're looking off the side of a mountain, you can see beyond 0 degrees. You can see negative 10 degrees,
Yeah.
negative 20, whatever.
Yeah.
And for you to go above 0, that you're looking up into the sky now.
Yeah.
Right? Almost always when you find a sun alignment, it's at a 0 degree elevation. Not all the time, but a lot.
Okay.
And so this one's one of the ones that it's above 0. But it would make sense to me that they would, if that was a hard and fast rule, that they wouldn't mind, not adhering to that for such a large stone, for such an interesting place. But
Well, what brings to mind is other effigies, birds, whales, because you'll find them at a certain angle, serpents. So they all have significance, I'm sure. So what about the bird effigy you found?
so the bird effigy is in a completely different state at a different site. It's not actually there.
No, but what is the purpose of where you found it? Any idea? Do you think it's alignment? Do you think it's a question of reverence during a ceremonial?
So the Thunderbird was instrumental in a lot of Native American myths and folklore.
Or was it a thunderbird? It looked smaller. It looked like almost like not a hummingbird, but it looked a lot smaller scale. Did.
I've seen a few birds, so I'd have to know which one you're referencing in particular.
You had circled it in red.
Okay, so that one is actually a site in Massachusetts, and the person who researched that spent about 4 years in the woods, and he had found certain propped boulders on top of this small mountain. And the small mountain was, if you look at it on a topography map, it's in the shape of a bird. There are 2 wings that come out. It's got a body.
Yeah.
It even looks like there's a head, and it's kind of turned to the side.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's how it looks to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was something that the reason that I picked up on that is because when I was researching in Pennsylvania, my friend had a photo from 1939, an aerial photo taken from probably 16 to 20,000 feet up. And you can see a break in the trees, and it's a stone wall.
Okay.
And it looks like a snake. And so I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. So I went and hunted down the next photo in the series where you have the whole snake in the photo.
Mm-hmm. And you saw the head?
And I talked to her, and she says there's an eye and a stone tongue coming out of the mouth of the snake.
Stone tongue. That's
right.
interesting.
So, so here's this whole thing. And I went to the topography map and I said, oh my God, this mountain is in the shape of a snake. So
The mountain and not a stone wall?
no, the mountain.
The mountain.
The mountain is in an S shape.
Okay.
And so what did they do? They built a snake effigy on top of it, of course. Why wouldn't they? It's in the shape of a snake. They
Yeah.
must have known the layout of the land
Yeah.
in order to say, well, we're going to put a snake effigy here.
And then where does the bird come in?
So the bird came in from, I'm looking at the topography map the same way I looked at the topography map for that snake site in Pennsylvania,
And it looked like prey?
and it looked like a bird. So
Was it in the position for the snake to make prey out of it?
no,
No?
these are two different states. The bird's in
okay.
one state, and,
Okay.
and the snake is in Pennsylvania.
Okay, so what do you suppose the purpose of the bird was where it's found?
So these are all sacred animals to the Native Americans. They had stories
Okay.
and beliefs about all of these
Yeah.
things, and so you find these motifs again and again and again.
You do.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, are they all Native American? What about the eye? Some believe it might be the eye of Ra or the eye of Horus.
Which I referring to?
Well, that is what I'm thinking of as an American Stonehenge. But there are others, too. So what do you think?
So I would have to know which eye specifically you were referring to, but
Okay.
is it actually an eye, or is it something that we interpret as being an eye because we know from these other cultures that the eye was significant?
Yeah. Well, in the literature, Dennis Stone refers to it as an eye, as well as, I don't remember the archaeologist he had up there. One was Godsworth. He was up there, and generally it's accepted as an eye. I kind of thought it was a whale, but I was overruled.
I'll tell you this. There was a man who was, he sold mattresses in my hometown, and he also sold metal detectors. It was his hobby. He had a glass case, and inside his glass case he had a metal dagger that the blade had been broken. There were markings on the blade, and I didn't know what they were. I couldn't read them. No one could. But he had taken that piece to some expert, and that expert told him, get this, that it was a ceremonial knife used in witch gatherings
Yeah.
in 1692. Okay, now we know that whole witch thing was hysteria, right? We know that now. We have some common sense and we understand that. So that doesn't make any sense to me. What does make more sense was that might have been something traded by the Vikings who did come to this continent and then worked its way inland. A lot of artifacts like that have been found. A Norse penny in Maine had been found. In the context in which it was found, there was all these other Native American items. It wasn't a Viking site, but that was there. So that makes much more sense to me. And the point of that is that even experts can get it wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, how about, we only have about, 5 more minutes? 3 minutes?
How many do you want?
60.
That text says that it is an actual cane, and it's about 15 feet tall. But
Oh.
15 feet?
That's all the information.
Well, hunt me down, find me on
wait.
social media, send me a message, and invite me along on a field trip, and I'd be happy to go with you, and you can show me. I'd
Tell
love
Jim
see
to
it.
take a picture of it, Willie. Okay, the Newport Tower.
I think
Sure.
That might be it. And yes, that would be Jim.
Well, that's a really large boulder with a few rocks on top
I
of
know
it. So
it.
that
I know it. So I'm not sure.
Oh, this is cute.
Yeah.
it's cute, but I don't think it's a real cairn. I don't,
I would say that that's modern.
yeah, I do
Yeah.
too.
A lot of people
I think
say
so,
that
yeah.
that's modern.
But at least he's thinking.
Yeah.
Got to
Yeah,
give him
he's-
credit. Okay, so the Newport Tower. It was believed that was constructed in the 17th century by perhaps colonists, but there's also the thought that perhaps it's connected to Vikings, and that no, it wasn't a windmill. I looked at your little your diagram with the different alignments, and there does seem to be some alignments there. But what about there are various niches that don't seem purposeful, and there's also there used to be 2 fireplaces at the second level. So What do you think it was?
All right, so
And who built it?
I'm not the expert on that. I'm not the expert on the Newport Tower.
Just what do you think?
That's Steve DiMarzo, Patrick Shackleton, and Jim Egan. They're the main researchers for that. And it was Shackleton who did the mock-up of the alignments that you saw.
Oh, did he? Okay.
So first off, I don't want to take credit for that because that was his. I did take the shot from up above, but he was the one that marked it up. So, all right. What do I think of it? I think that it makes sense what the science that Patrick Shackleton is doing on it, finding out what all of these alignments are for, or what they're at least aimed to. And what he says is design equals function. So if you're going to take the time to design this, thereby when you figure out what that is, you will have the function of it. You will understand the function of it. Steve DiMarzo has been doing some really interesting research on it as well. He's digging up all of these old maps that have been kept in vaults, locked away from the public for millennia. And he's finding very interesting markings on these maps in the same place where the Newport Tower is. And there are several maps, at least 4, I think maybe now 5, that appear to have the Newport Tower drawn on them.
What are the maps dated to?
Pre-1639, which is when the scholars believe that it was built by Benedict Arnold, the first governor of Rhode Island, the great-great-grandfather of the traitor Benedict Arnold.
Well, let's just hypothesize a little bit here. What if they were built earlier? What if they were built 300 or 400 years earlier? What if the Vikings did it? I looked at it, and what came to mind to me was, I don't think it was a place to live in. I think that it could almost have been like a lighthouse to guide other ships what part of the shore to come into when they're sailing from the north and into this area of New England around Newport, Rhode Island, so that especially in the evening or even during the day, they would be able to see all of the fire and the smoke and whatnot, just like a lighthouse, to guide them into shore where whichever family of Vikings had settled. That's kind of the feeling I had. What do you think? They probably would have aligned things up purposefully.
I would have to disagree with that.
Okay.
I would not think it was Vikings. I think the Viking idea got attributed to that during the 1800s when there was this huge Viking craze and everybody wanted, Vikings.
Well, then what about purpose?
The purpose. So it's been compared to other buildings throughout Europe and the Middle East.
Yeah.
And again, this is Shackleton's idea, but I kind of think that he's onto something here. He seems to think it was a church. It was built as a church, right? And that is because it bears striking resemblance to some of the churches that are found in Europe, and one in, I think, Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And that would go back a ways.
Yeah, pre-1600s for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Then, what, maybe Jewish people built it? Is that the idea?
I'm not in a place to make guesses as to who did that. I just don't think it was Vikings, and I think the Chinese might have been one of the. I don't think it was them. If they made it to America, they wouldn't have made it over here.
What about the purpose of the 2 fireplaces on the second level? I mean, it makes you wonder.
Yeah, Jim Egan's got a great idea about that fireplace.
What's that?
He seems to think it was, what's the word for it? Like a mirror, like through the sun would shine off of the water and then reflect up onto or into the fireplace, and it would look as if the fireplace were on fire. I was there when they did some research into the 2 shafts that lead out of that fireplace, and they were not able to find any evidence of soot. Now, this thing's hundreds of years old. There might not have been any there.
Vertical shafts or horizontal? You're talking vertical? Okay.
Yeah, vertical. One of them comes out on the top of the stone structure, and the other one comes out on the side of it. But in both of these shafts, they didn't find any evidence of fire whatsoever.
Okay. Well, there were some, seemed to be shafts horizontal that went through, that maybe light shone through there through alignments.
It would have come through. The light would have come through one of the windows on the west side of the structure.
Wow. Really inconclusive, though, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's a little bit after 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I suppose we should wrap it up, huh?
Oh.
We're actually...
Not enough time.
We've actually
Never enough time.
gone into overtime, but, you know, I'll kind of leave it up to you.
You know, yeah, you kind of allow that from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we still have more to talk about, that we'll have to just carry this over to another show.
Sure. I'd be happy to come back.
Maybe even the Bear's Den, the lime kiln, which I wanted to talk about. And maybe even get into the effigies a little bit more. And I guess we could narrow it down to specific sites, but it would be fun to do that.
Absolutely.
Get more purpose out of that. And the petroglyphs at Bellows Falls. There we go. I want to squeeze that in.
Bellows Falls. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, thank you very much for joining us. You want to give out website and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at Nessie.com. That's NEHSSIE.com. That's New England's Historical Stone Sites Investigations and Explorations. Hashtag that on YouTube and Facebook, and you'll find me. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like and follow the Facebook page. Join the Facebook group.
Okay. And the collage, the intro to the site is really well done.
Thank you.
Very classy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, everybody should check that out.
Check it out. Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Matt.
I really enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. We'll do it again.
And we will do it again. And hey, that's it for tonight. Hey, next week.
What about next week?
Robin Pyatt Bellamy.
Oh yes, we're going to talk about. Mothman. There we go. The Mothman. So thank you, everyone, for listening, and you have a great evening. Just not enough time.
I kind of thought we would run out of time.
Yeah.
There's so much to talk about.
Oh, there is. I wasn't quite sure how much we could cover and how deeply we could go, but I'm glad you got into the tripod rock a little bit more.
Yeah, there's so much more that I have to tell about that. There really is. There's so much that I found. It's amazing.
What else is here?
So I got to thinking to myself, so what? There's what I think is a stone head. Let me dismiss it as bogus. Okay?
Yeah.
Let me just say, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not true.
It's just a natural formation.
Yeah. Let me just assume that. I was looking for that line, right?
Yeah.
That the other researcher said went through that pass. Now, I had a drone shot of this site from 400 feet above it. And that was...
Of the head?
No, the whole site.
Oh, the
whole site. And I did that because other researchers had made maps of it, but of course, hand-drawn maps aren't going to be as accurate. So I wanted something truly accurate. So I took this drone shot. Now...
That's going to be your next investment, really.
Drone? Yeah, I almost did. I was looking.
I was there in March. I was there again in April, and I was there again in May.
Okay.
I lost all my footage from April.
Oh no.
I know. And so I went again in May and tried to shoot everything else I needed to finish that 40-minute test pilot. And as I was sitting there at my computer a couple of months later doing some work on the documentary, lo and behold, I'm looking at this drone shot because I'm trying to see, does that line go through the two boulders? You can't see it on Google Earth, so I referred to the drone shot. And I'm looking at this, and another stone head pops out.
Really?
From 400 feet above, and I'm like, no, it can't be. And it's the same exact profile as what's on top of Tripod Rock.
And where was it in relation to
Probably
that?
25 feet to the northeast. I had walked all over that thing. You don't even see it. It's not, it doesn't even register. So I'm like...
Was the boulder itself the head?
No,
or was it just part of it?
I'll show you. Let me break that camera down.
I got all these pictures of the tripod rock up here. Look at that one. I was holding that thing up there.
Yeah, doesn't it look incredible?
You have been listening to Spirit Radio, The Paranormal Experience, with your hosts Willie Hassel and Lynn Nickerson on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Granite Sky is proud to serve the Granite State, New England, and the world via the Internet with rock-solid support and personal services. There are many aspects to ufology, and the experiencer is too often overlooked. At Granite Sky, their focus is on people, not proof. Granite Sky focuses on supporting those who have had extraterrestrial encounters and abduction experiences. We believe no one should have to face these experiences alone. If you've been visited, visit them at www.granitesky.org.